Welcome to the Blender Basics video tutorial series. This video will focus on Chapter 8, Ray Tracing. My name is Jim Chronister, and the Blender Basics book can be downloaded from www.cdschools.org/cdhs. And again, go to Staff, find my name, you'll find all the links for Blender Basics. Today we're just going to start out with a brand new Blender file. I'm going to delete the initial cube, and for ray tracing, we're going to actually start out with a nice simple scene to work with here. I switched to a number 7, a top view. Number 5, switch to an orthographic view. And I'm going to start by adding Shift A, adding a mesh, a UV sphere. And let's grab that, pull it over here. I'm going to turn off my transform widgets. I'm going to hit Shift A again. This time I'm going to add the monkey head, Suzanne. Switch to a number 3 side view. I'm going to rotate it upwards so it's like sitting flat on the ground. I'm going to bring my little 3D bullseye down below them. Hit number 7, go back to a top view, Shift A, add mesh, add a plane this time, and scale it up to represent the floor. Now, let's split my viewports, start out with a camera view here, just so I can see what the camera is looking at. And let's see, I'm going to rotate the monkey head to face towards the camera. Grab it, pull it back here a little bit, pull this cube or sphere a little bit closer to it. And hit F12, render a picture, and let's see what we have. Okay, so there's what I have for a scene so far. Okay, now here's what ray tracing does. Ray tracing, I've been using Blender long enough that I remember when Blender did not have ray tracing. Back then, if you wanted to simulate shadows, mirror reflections, or transparency with distortion, a technical name for that's called refraction, and mirror would be reflection. You had a very complicated process to go through. Ray tracing gives us reflection, refraction, and shadows on every type of Blender lamp. So let's get started here. First thing I want to do with this, right now the sphere doesn't look very good. When I hit F12 and I render a picture, everything is really faced off and rough looking. In order to make the sphere look a little bit smoother, I'm going to look at my toolbox and I'm going to scan down through my toolbox options here, and there's my smoothing for shading. So now when I hit F12 and render a picture, the sphere looks nice and smooth. And the monkey head, we're going to do the same thing to that, smooth. But smooth just does not do enough to the monkey head. It still looks a little rough because it has a very low face count on it. It's been modeled very simply. So in order to make that look a little bit better, I'm actually going to go over to my properties buttons, and I'm going to go to the little wrench for modifiers. I'm going to add a generate modifier called subdivision surface. And what that does is it looks at every face and subdivides it again to make the monkey head look a lot smoother. Very nice for many meshes. Okay, so first thing we want to do is let's look at lighting and ray shadow with lighting. If you notice, we have one light in our Blender scene. It's not looking too good right now. If I look at my lamp buttons, my lamp settings, okay, it's a point light, and if I go down to my shadow, it's already defaulted to have ray shadow turned on. If I hit no shadow and hit F12, it's actually going to render much faster, and it's going to render without a shadow. So ray shadow is what's going to give me the shadow effect when I render it. Okay, well, let's look at this again from a top view. It's not quite enough light, so I'm going to Shift D, duplicate that lamp, and put another one over here. So when I hit F12, now I have two lamps, and both lamps have ray shadow turned on. That may or may not be a good thing. So I'm going to take this one lamp, turn it to no shadow, so even though it now lights up the scene, it does not cast a shadow. Now, here's some other options that we have for ray shadow effects. I'm going to take that lamp and I'm going to change it from a point light into a spotlight. So now if I look at this from a front view, there's the lamp. I'm going to rotate it this direction. Look at it from a side view. Let's rotate it again. I'm going to narrow up the spotlight shape, the size angle of it a little bit, make it a little more intense. Now when I hit F12, let's see what we have. Okay, so here's the spotlight, still not quite angled quite right, so I'm going to look at it from a top view now in number 7. I'm going to rotate that lamp again, point it back this way. F12, now it's kind of showing on the scenes, and you can see the edge of the circle. Okay, so what can we do to this spotlight? Well, right now it's not casting a shadow. We're going to hit the ray shadow button. When we hit F12 now, it's now casting a shadow that direction. Okay, we want to make it maybe a little more intense. Maybe we want the spotlight to be a little brighter than the other, so we'll take the energy up. And now this will cast a brighter light on it and give it a harder shadow in this direction. Now notice the edge of the cone is a little faded, a little rough. Okay, well we can also play with that with the size of the the size of the spotlight angle here. Okay, so light size for ray shadow. So again, you can kind of control that spotlight shape, give the blend a little bit more blend effect to it. There are a lot of things you can do with the spotlight, but again, ray shadow is a nice thing that you can play around with. Okay, now let's look at some of the other things here. Let's select our floor this time. Let's put a material and a texture on our floor. So I'll first apply a material, and I could name it and mess with that, but I'm trying to be quick here today. Let's go to texture, add a new texture, change the type from clouds to image or movie. Scroll down my list of options. Here's an open button under image. So let's see, I'm going to go out to my folder where I have all of my texture maps. I want to view them by thumbnails. I'm going to go into brick, stone, concrete, and by the way, I've accumulated these materials and textures over the years. You may download this library from CD School's website. And let's put on a nice simple brick texture here. What do I want to work with today? Let's go with this desert rose. Open image. So if I hit F12, I'm now going to see bricks on that ground. They're pretty big bricks. Maybe I want more bricks than that. So if I go to the texture panel and I look under mapping, or image mapping is where I want to actually be. Let's repeat the bricks twice in the X and the Y direction. So now I have a few more bricks. Okay, let's make this a highly polished brick surface. So go back to materials. Down under the material buttons, so materials, down under here you see the mirror option for ray mirror. I check the ray mirror option. Reflectivity, the reflection, how much is it going to reflect? If I close up these other panels so I can also see my sample, you'll see how much it will reflect or not. And you have to be careful. If you pull up the reflection too much, you won't see much of the brick, you'll just see more reflection. Okay, so there's reflection, and I'm starting to see some of the monkey head reflecting on the brick. If I drag that really high, and I hit F12, you're going to see less brick, more reflection now. Okay, now that looks really good, but you know what? If this were really brick, I would probably see some definition in the mortar joint and some roughness in the surface of the brick. To get that, I'm going to go back to textures, and if I go down here underneath my influence, under geometry, you have a normal button. I'm going to take the normal down just a little bit, and now when I hit F12, you're going to actually see some definition to the brick along with the reflection. It looks like it's kind of polished or wet. So you can do some different things with that. Okay, what do we want to do with the monkey head? Let's escape out of that. Select the monkey head. Let's apply a material to the monkey head. Scroll down the list. Go down to mirror. We're going to make this a chromed monkey head very easily. Turn on mirror, take reflection all the way up. If you want to have a different color effect with reflection, you can give it a color right now. So now we have chrome monkey head is reflecting the brick underneath him. Mirror is pretty easy. There are some things you can control here. Sometimes if you have too much reflection on an object, like the maximum distance, how far can things be away from the object and still reflect off of them. If your scene is really slow, you can always take the maximum distance and give it a number. Do you want to fade to the material or to the sky color? That's a big difference in the effect on how it's going to look. How much glossiness. There's a lot of different things that you can play around with for that. I'm going to select the sphere this time, and we're going to make this look like a crystal ball. So we're going to give it a material, scroll back up, add a new material to it. Scroll down, we're going to close up mirror and turn on transparency. Now, if I just keep it at transparency and play with the alpha, that's just going to be like Blender's old-fashioned transparency. It's going to look transparent, you'll be able to see through it, but it won't look realistic because you will not see any distortion through a sphere. In reality, something like this is going to show distortion through it. So there's no distortion at all through that thing. Okay, so we're not going to use the alpha setting. We're going to use ray tracing. And what do we have for ray tracing? Fresnel would be the amount of transparency. And again, if I pull this down so I can see my sample, let's start dragging the Fresnel up, and voila, you should start to see some transparency occurring. Okay, looks pretty neat. Let's keep the transparency about there. Let's hit F12, render a new picture. And again, every time I add ray tracing to something in my scene, I'm going to slow down my render times when I hit F12. Okay, so we're getting over to the actual scene of the sphere. And there you go. It's transparent. You have a little haze around the edge of it. But the problem is there's no distortion while looking through that UV sphere. No distortion at all. So that's not very realistic. So what I'm going to do to improve that is right here's a button called IOR, which stands for Index of Refraction. If I start dragging that number up and you look at my sample, I'm starting to see distortion. Hit F12 again, and now you're going to see some distortion. And while that's rendering, let's talk about some of your other settings here. Let's say you're going to make a drinking glass that you want to be able to see all the way through it. You may have to take the depth up to be able to see all the way through multiple layers on an object. Limit the amount of distortion, fall off. Again, some filters in here that you can play with. There are some different things you can do, but now you're starting to see distortion through that little crystal ball there. So we've got the chrome monkey head, and we have the transparent sphere with refraction on it. Index of refraction is what controls that. And again, depth will also improve quality, but now we've got kind of a magnifying glass effect on there. And that's about it for ray tracing.